Sarah Chen had always prided herself on her perfect memory. As a forensic psychologist, she relied on her ability to recall every detail of her interviews, every micro-expression, every hesitation in a witness's voice. "Sarah, I need you here now. We've got something. ... Unprecedented. Built in 1923, it had housed the mentally ill for 70 years before budget cuts and scandal finally shuttered its doors. Now it stood empty, its broken windows like dead eyes staring into the night. It was her superpower, the thing that made her exceptional at her job. Until the night she met the ghost in the old Blackwood psychiatric hospital. 3 other officers stood nearby, their faces pale and confused. The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Detective Marcus Rivera's voice was strained, almost desperate. The abandoned hospital loomed against the storm clouds like a monument to forgotten suffering. Marcus began, "We found them this morning, all alive, all physically unharmed. But Sarah... The strange thing is, they all describe the same figure. A woman in a white dress, floating just above the ground." They reached the former psychiatric wing, where the most disturbed patients had been housed. Marcus said, stopping at cell number 237. All 5 of them, sitting in a circle, staring at nothing. The walls were covered in scratches, not the random marks of vandals, but deliberate patterns that seemed to tell a story. Eleanor Blackwood, 1954 to 1973. These aren't random scratches. They're records, names, dates, fragments of sentences carved deep into the padding. The heavy metal door stood open, revealing padded cells that seemed to absorb their flashlight beams. They say, she touched them, and then ... Nothing. The hospital still reeked of antiseptic and despair, a combination that made Sarah's skin crawl. Peeling paint hung from the walls like diseased skin, and their flashlight beams revealed decades of neglect. David Park, 35, lost his entire wedding day and honeymoon. It's like someone reached into their heads and selectively deleted parts of their lives. So they tried to take them from me. With drugs, with electricity, with pain. But I held on. I kept every single one. The ghost was speaking directly into her mind now. Her voice like whispers in an empty cathedral. He paused, running a hand through his graying hair. They don't remember anything. Not just about last night. They've lost chunks of their past. Years of memories. Just ... gone. Not to harm them. To preserve them. The memories were being lost forever. Forgotten. Discarded. I saved them. They had no respect for the pain these walls had witnessed. So I took their happiest memories. Their love. Their joy. Their celebrations. You know what it's like to treasure memories. To need them to survive. You won't try to stop me. I keep them safe now, where they can't be corrupted by time or indifference. Sarah found Marcus in the main lobby, his usually steady hands trembling as he held his coffee cup. She watched in fascination as letters formed. They tried to take my memories too, but I kept them. I kept them all. Eleanor's ghostly finger traced a line across her temple, and suddenly Sarah could see them. Thousands of memories floating around the spirit like golden bubbles. Wedding days, first kisses, children's laughter, graduations, birthdays. All the moments that made life worth living, stolen and preserved in eternal clarity. Their breath became visible in the suddenly frigid air, and the scratches on the walls began to glow with a faint, ethereal light. "What's the situation?" Sarah asked, pulling her coat tighter against the cold that seemed to seep through the walls. 5 people entered this building yesterday as part of an urban exploration group. I could keep them safe forever. She wore a hospital gown that had long since turned white with age, and her dark hair floated around her face as if she were underwater. Her eyes were hollow, but not empty. They held the weight of 1,000 stolen moments. Behind them, the walls began to glow with the light of 1,000 stolen moments, and the sound of weeping filled the air. Not from one voice, but from hundreds. All morning, the memories they'd lost. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. All 5, every single one. Jenny Martinez, 23, can't remember her college graduation or her boyfriend of 3 years. They walked through the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. "Have you interviewed them?" Sarah asked. "Tried to. They're cooperative, but it's like talking to people with selective amnesia." Sarah's rational mind rejected the supernatural explanation, but her instincts told her something was genuinely wrong here. This is where they were found. Sarah stepped into the cell, immediately feeling the temperature drop another 10 degrees. "Marcus, look at this." Sarah traced one of the carvings with her finger. Records of what? Before Sarah could answer, the temperature plummeted further. "We need to leave now," Marcus said, reaching for Sarah's arm. But Sarah was transfixed. The glowing scratches were moving, rearranging themselves into new patterns, new words. A figure materialized in the corner of the cell, translucent, shimmering, definitely female. "You're Eleanor Blackwood," Sarah whispered. The ghost nodded slowly. "I was a patient here. They said I was delusional, that my memories weren't real." Marcus was pulling at Sarah's arm, but she couldn't move. "When I died, I discovered I could take memories from others. The urban explorers," Sarah managed to say. "They came here to mock this place, to treat it like entertainment." Sarah felt something cold touch her forehead. "You understand?" Eleanor said, her hollow eyes fixing on Sarah. But Sarah was already backing away, her hand finding Marcus's. "We have to go now." As they fled the cell, Sarah heard Eleanor's voice following them. "I'll be waiting." "Sarah Chen, your memories are so beautiful, so perfect." They ran through the corridors, their footsteps echoing like gunshots in the silence. Sarah didn't stop running until they reached a car, and even then, she could feel Eleanor's presence, watching from the hospital windows. Patient and eternal. 3 days passed, and Sarah couldn't shake the encounter from her mind. She'd interviewed the 5 urban explorers, documenting their memory loss with clinical precision. But every session left her more disturbed than the last. The victims weren't just missing memories. They were missing pieces of their souls. Jenny Martinez sat across from Sarah in the sterile interview room, her eyes vacant in a way that had nothing to do with trauma. "I know I had a boyfriend," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. His wife had shown him videos, photos, tried desperately to help him remember. "It said I can't feel it anymore. My wife tells me about our first dance, shows me the video, but there's nothing there. No warmth, no love." The scratches glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. As she set up her equipment, she felt the temperature drop. She told herself it was for research to understand the phenomenon better. The ghost materialized slowly, her form more solid than before. "Those memories don't belong to you. They took it for granted. Let it fade through neglect and time. I preserve it, keep it perfect forever. You couldn't stay away from me, could you? You understand what I'm trying to do." But deep down, she knew the truth. Eleanor had gotten into her head, and Sarah couldn't let go. "Do you know what it's like to have your memories stolen? To be told that what you remember isn't real, that your mind is sick, that your past is a lie. You're taking them. Those people will never experience that joy again. Just ... nothing." Eleanor's cold hand touched her forehead, and suddenly Sarah was drowning in a sea of stolen memories. She experienced David's wedding day, the overwhelming love he felt watching his bride walk down the aisle. She felt the joy of 1,000 birthday parties, the warmth of family gatherings, the electric thrill of falling in love. She'd read Eleanor's file, the one Marcus had dug up from the hospital's archives. "Come closer, Sarah. Let me show you what I've collected. They'll never be corrupted by time or disappointment." Eleanor Blackwood, admitted in 1954 for hysteria and delusions. She'd claimed to remember things that her family denied. Abuse, neglect, trauma. "You want to give me your memories so I can keep them safe," she thought of her own precious memories. Her mother's laughter, her graduation day, the moment she'd solved her first case. They were already fading, becoming less sharp with each passing year. What if Eleanor could preserve them forever? The loss of those perfect memories hit her like a physical blow. For a moment, she understood the appeal. To live in a world where joy was eternal, where love never faded, where every moment was preserved in crystal clarity. The doctors had used primitive treatments to cure her, essentially erasing her mind. But the memories were gone, leaving only empty spaces where joy used to live. Hundreds of treatments, trying to burn away what I knew to be true. But I held on. I kept every single memory, even the painful ones. And when I died, I discovered I could do to others what they tried to do to me. The victims had lost their most precious memories, the ones that defined who they were, the moments that made life meaningful. What remained were the mundane details. What they ate for lunch, their commute to work, the plot of movies they'd watched. The ghost had taken their joy and left them with existence. I can see photos of us together, but I can't remember how it felt to love him. It's like watching a movie of someone else's life. She'd brought recording equipment, EMF detectors, cameras, all the tools of a modern ghost hunter. But she suspected they'd be useless against something that existed in the realm of memory itself. David Park was worse. He'd forgotten his wedding day, his honeymoon, the birth of his first child. It's not just that I can't remember, David explained, tears streaming down his face. Sarah's notes were meticulous, but they told a story that science couldn't explain. That night, Sarah found herself back at the hospital. The building seemed different in the darkness. The shadows moved strangely, and the air hummed with an energy that made her skin crawl. She made her way to cell 237, her flashlight beam dancing across the walls. "I knew you'd come back," Eleanor's voice whispered behind her. Sarah turned, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "I understand that you're stealing people's lives," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. Eleanor glided closer, her feet never touching the ground. "Don't they? Those people were careless with their joy, by torturing them, by leaving them empty, by saving what would have been lost anyway." Eleanor's hollow eyes flashed with anger. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. "They tried to take my memories with electroshock therapy," Eleanor continued, her voice growing stronger. "But you're not just preserving memories," Sarah said. "Won't they?" Eleanor smiled, and the expression was more terrifying than her anger. Against her better judgment, Sarah stepped forward. She saw Jenny's first kiss, felt the butterfly sensation in her stomach as her boyfriend took her hand. But these weren't her memories. They were perfect, crystalline, but they belonged to other people. She was experiencing stolen emotions, borrowed joy. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Eleanor whispered, "so much more vivid than when they were trapped in forgetful minds. Here, they'll never fade." Sarah jerked back, breaking the connection. "You want to join them?" Eleanor said, reading her expression. "No," Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. She thought of her own precious memories. Her mother's laughter, her graduation day, the moment she'd solved her first case. They were already fading, becoming less sharp with each passing year. What if Eleanor could preserve them forever? You remember sitting by her hospital bed, holding her hand as she slipped away. You remember every word she said, every breath she took. But it's fading, isn't it? Each year, the memory becomes less clear. Your mother's voice, her touch, her love, all of it crystal clear for eternity. "I can see them," Eleanor said, her hollow eyes reflecting Sarah's thoughts. "Your mother's death. You were 12. Sarah's hand shook. That memory was sacred to her. The last conversation she'd had with her mother. It was becoming harder to remember her mother's exact words, the sound of her voice. This place had been designed to take away memories, to erase the inconvenient truths of the human mind. Eleanor was just continuing that tradition. But in reverse, instead of erasing memories, she was hoarding them. "I can preserve it," Eleanor offered. "I can keep it perfect forever, and leave me empty like the others." Each time, I'd lose a little more of myself. I took the memory of a nurse who'd been kind to me, preserved her compassion forever. She forgot that moment, but I kept it safe. But I fought back. I held on to every memory, every feeling, every moment of truth. In her mind, she was a curator, a guardian of precious moments. You're stealing them. Those people need their joy to live, to grow, to love again. Without those memories, they're just shells. She'd been so traumatized by having her own memories dismissed and erased that she'd become obsessed with preserving them. They came here to mock this place, to treat suffering as entertainment. They deserve to lose their happiness. All of them were people who'd visited the hospital after it closed. Urban explorers, paranormal investigators, teenagers on dares. The pattern is always the same. They go in, they come out changed. And when I died, when their treatments finally killed me, I discovered I could take memories from others. You'd be free from the pain of losing it, free from watching it fade. Isn't that worth something? The hospital records showed that Eleanor died in 1973, but the disappearances didn't start until 1985. It took her 12 years to figure out how to take memories from the living. Eleanor doesn't just take memories. She absorbs them, makes them part of her essence. They're not stored somewhere. We can retrieve them. They're gone. Last night, she showed me some of her collection. Marcus, it's not just theft. She genuinely believes she's preserving something precious in her mind. She's saving these memories from being forgotten. There had been others, probably many others over the decades since the hospital closed. No way to give people back what they've lost. Sarah looked around the cell, at the walls covered in the scratches of the dead and forgotten. I'd told my parents about my uncle, about what he did to me. They said I was lying, that I was sick. The doctors agreed. Sarah had spent the night researching Eleanor's history, diving deep into the archives that documented the hospital's dark past. She sees people as careless with their joy, ungrateful for their happiness. She thinks she's doing them a favor by preserving their best moments in perfect clarity. They said my memories were false, that I was delusional. What happened to you here? Sarah asked. Their first loves, their achievements, their happiest moments. The police always classified it as trauma-induced amnesia. But now, ... Double quotes Eleanor's expression, I was 17 when they brought me here. So they tried to erase them. Every week, they'd strap me to a table and send electricity through my brain. The first time you took someone's memories, how did it feel? Eleanor's face softened, becoming almost human, like coming home. Like finally being able to breathe. Sarah realized with horror that Eleanor didn't see herself as a villain. But you're not preserving them, Sarah said gently. Eleanor's eyes flashed with anger. They didn't deserve them. They were careless, thoughtless. And what about the others? The ones who weren't urban explorers? Eleanor's silence was answer enough. Sarah realized that the 5 explorers weren't Eleanor's first victims. The next morning, Sarah sat in the hospital cafeteria with Marcus, both of them nursing black coffee and trying to process what they'd learned. I've found 12 missing persons reports dating back to 1985, Sarah said, sliding a folder across the table. Marcus flipped through the reports, his expression growing grimmer with each page. Changed how memory loss, but not recent memory loss. They lose their most precious memories. Now we know it's Eleanor. Marcus closed the folder. How many victims are we talking about? At least 50 over the past 40 years. Maybe more. Marcus rubbed his temples, and there's no way to reverse it. Sarah had been dreading this question. I don't think so. So what's our play here? We can't exactly arrest a ghost. We need to understand why she's doing this. By traumatizing innocent people. She doesn't see it that way. She sees people as careless with their joy, ungrateful for their happiness. She thinks she's doing them a favor by preserving their best moments in perfect clarity. Marcus leaned back in his chair. So how do we stop her? Sarah had been thinking about this all night. I think we need to give her what she really wants. Not more memories, but resolution. She's trapped in that hospital because of what was done to her. She's been stealing joy because hers was taken away. You want to help her move on? I want to help her heal. But first, we need to understand the full scope of what she's done. Dad died of cancer when I was 25. I sat with him at the end, and he told me how proud he was of me, but I can't remember what he said. I know it was important, but it's like it never happened. I know it happened, she said, tears streaming down her face. I have the photos, the hospital records. I knew you would. You understand what I'm trying to do? I understand that you're trying to hold on to something that was taken from you. Every week, they'd strap me down and send electricity through my brain. They said they were curing me, but they were trying to kill who I was. but I can't remember holding her for the first time. That moment is just gone. They spent the day interviewing more victims, people who'd visited the hospital over the years and come away changed, unlike the people who owned them. I'll never forget. I'll never let them fade. The pattern was always the same. They'd encountered Eleanor, she'd touched them, and their most precious memories had vanished. They'd been hollowed out, left with the mechanical details of existence, but none of the joy, every moment of pain, every second of fear, every instant of joy before it was all taken away. Your real memories, from before they brought you here. I wanted to be a teacher, to help children learn. But then my uncle, double quotes. She trailed off, her form becoming more translucent. And when I died, I discovered I could take memories from others, preserve them the way mine should have been preserved. I believe that this place tried to erase who you were. Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, 67, had lost a memory of her daughter's birth. Tom Williams, 34, had lost his memory of his father's last words. The ghost was floating above the treatment table, her form more solid than ever. Each interview broke Sarah's heart a little more. These people were unjust missing memories. They were missing the emotional foundations that made them who they were. People will forget, and all that beauty will be lost. I believe you, she said softly. I've protected them from time and forgetfulness. They don't have to be preserved forever to matter. The beauty is in the living, not in the keeping. They were meant to help people grow and change and love again. That evening, Sarah returned to the hospital alone. She'd made her decision, and she knew Marcus would try to stop her if he knew what she was planning. She found Eleanor in the old electroshock therapy room, a chamber of horrors where the hospital had tried to cure mental illness with controlled seizures. They said I was lying, that I was sick. They brought me here to be fixed. You came back, Eleanor said, her voice echoing in the sterile room. No one ever believed me. They all said I was delusional, that my memories were false. I understand that you're in pain, Sarah said. They tried to erase me, Eleanor said, her hollow eyes focusing on the treatment table. But you survived. You kept your memories. I kept them all. Sarah stepped closer. But you're not preserving them. You're hoarding them. Those memories don't belong to you. Eleanor's form flickered with anger. They belong to me now. I've kept them safe. Perfect. Unchanging. What about your own memories? Eleanor's expression soft. I was happy once. I had a family, friends, dreams. What happened? He hurt me. For years, he hurt me. And when I finally told my parents, they didn't believe me. Sarah felt a surge of compassion. Eleanor hadn't just been robbed of her memories. She'd been robbed of her truth, her reality, her very identity. Eleanor's hollow eyes widened. I believe that you were telling the truth. I believe that you were hurt, and that your family failed you. For the first time, Eleanor looked truly vulnerable. Your memories were real. Your pain was real. What happened to you was wrong. Eleanor began to weep, her tears falling like silver rain. I just wanted someone to remember. I wanted my truth to matter. It does matter. But Eleanor, you can't heal your pain by taking joy from others. You can't find peace by hoarding stolen memories. But if I let them go, they'll be forgotten. Sarah took another step closer. That's not true. Memories don't have to be perfect to be meaningful. But I've kept them safe for so long. You've protected them from life. Those memories were meant to be lived, not stored. Eleanor's form began to flicker, becoming less solid. I don't know how to let go. I've been holding on for so long. I'll help you, Sarah said. But first, you have to give back what you've taken. You have to return the memories to their rightful owners. I can't. They're part of me now. If I give them back, I'll have nothing left. It means you're choosing to be more than what they tried to make you. She was wrestling with decades of anger and pain, trying to find the strength to do what was right. You'll have your truth. You'll have your story. You'll have the peace you've been searching for. If I give them back, won't that mean they won? Eleanor looked around the room, at the walls that had witnessed so much suffering. This place tried to take my memories. No, Sarah said firmly. It means you're choosing to heal. It means you're choosing to break the cycle of pain. I remember what it felt like to be alive. They were filled with a light that seemed to come from within, a warmth that had been buried under decades of pain. Eleanor closed her hollow eyes, and Sarah could see the struggle playing out across her ethereal features. I remember being happy, Eleanor whispered. Before everything went wrong, I remember laughing with my friends, playing in the garden, dreaming about the future. She could see glimpses of their contents: a child's first steps, a wedding kiss, a graduation ceremony, a moment of forgiveness between friends. I'd forgotten how beautiful they were when they were alive, when they were part of someone's story. One by one, they floated away from her, passing through the walls of the hospital and seeking their original owners. As each memory left, Eleanor became more translucent, her form beginning to fade. Jenny's remembering her first kiss. David is remembering his wedding day. Mrs. Rodriguez is remembering her daughter's birth. I thought I was preserving them, but I was killing them. The oppressive weight that had hung over the hospital for decades was lifting, replaced by something lighter, more hopeful. Each bubble pulsed with life, with the emotions of the people who had created them. For the first time in decades, I'm not carrying the weight of all those stolen moments. I'm just me. You can have that again. Not the same life, but the same peace. I remember what it felt like to be alive, to be happy, to be loved. I am ready to stop being the ghost of my trauma and become the spirit of who I really was. The walls, once covered in scratches and decay, show glimpses of what the building had been in its better days. A place of healing, of hope, of second chances. The other patients who died here, they're not angry anymore. They're free. I remember my mother's smile, my father's laugh, my friends' voices. They were holding hands, forming a circle around Eleanor, welcoming her home. I remember the girl I was before the pain started. The anger and pain that had defined her for so long were gone, replaced by a serene acceptance. You can let go of the anger and find rest. Will you stay with me while I do it? Jenny had called her boyfriend, crying with joy as she remembered their first date. David was holding his wife, both of them weeping as their wedding day came flooding back. Sarah nodded. I'll stay with you. You won't be alone. Eleanor opened her eyes, and for the first time, they weren't hollow. The stolen memories materialized like soap bubbles, each one containing a perfect moment of joy, love, or triumph. They floated through the air, thousands of them, creating a constellation of human happiness. I'm ready, she said. I'm ready to give them back. Eleanor raised her translucent hands, and the air around them began to shimmer with golden light. Sarah watched in amazement as the memories danced around them. They're beautiful, Sarah whispered. They are, Eleanor agreed, her voice filled with wonder. With a gesture that seemed to take tremendous effort, Eleanor began to release the memories. It's working, Sarah said, feeling a change in the air. I can feel them finding their way home, Eleanor said, her voice growing fainter. Sarah's phone buzzed with text messages. Marcus reporting that the victims were suddenly recovering their memories. How do you feel? Sarah asked Eleanor. Lighter, Eleanor replied. Free. As the last of the memories floated away, Eleanor's form became almost completely transparent. But instead of looking empty or hollow, she looked peaceful. I remember now, she said softly. Are you ready to let go of the pain too? Sarah asked. Eleanor nodded. I'm ready. The hospital around them began to change. The oppressive darkness lifted, and warm light filtered through the windows. I can see them, Eleanor said, her voice filled with wonder. Sarah looked around and saw them. Dozens of ghostly figures, all the souls who had been trapped in the hospital by their pain and suffering. They were holding hands, forming a circle around Eleanor, welcoming her home. We've been waiting for you, one of them said. We've been waiting for you to remember who you really were. Eleanor turned to Sarah one last time. Thank you, she said. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for helping me remember that I was more than my pain. Thank you for choosing to heal, Sarah replied. Thank you for choosing to let go. Eleanor smiled, and in that smile, Sarah saw the 17-year-old girl she had been. Bright, hopeful, full of dreams. I'm not the memory thief anymore, she said. I'm just Eleanor, and I'm going home. The ghosts began to fade, their forms dissolving into points of light that rose toward the ceiling and beyond. The last thing Sarah saw was a young woman in a white dress, no longer floating in pain. The scratches on the walls had faded, the cold spots had warmed, and the air no longer carried the weight of decades of anguish. But walking into the light, surrounded by friends who had waited decades for her to join them, Eleanor is at peace, and the victims are getting their memories back. Eleanor was the last to go, her form becoming more beautiful and peaceful with each passing moment. David is with his family. Mrs. Rodriguez is holding her daughter and crying with joy. They're all whole again. Will you help people remember the truth about what happened here? She's just a girl who was hurt and forgotten, but who finally found her way home. Will you tell my story? She asked as she began to disappear. She researched Eleanor's history, uncovering the truth about her abuse and the hospital's attempts to erase her memories. A plaque near the entrance read, "In memory of Eleanor Blackwood and all those whose voices were silenced. May their stories be remembered, their pain be acknowledged, and their truth be honored." She wrote a comprehensive report that would eventually lead to a formal investigation into the hospital's practices. She would whisper a quiet thank you to the ghost, who had reminded her that memories, even painful ones, were not meant to be hoarded or stolen, but lived, shared, and passed on as part of the continuing story of human resilience and hope. "I will," Sarah promised. "I'll make sure your story is told, and I'll make sure the truth is remembered." In the end, Eleanor had found what she'd been searching for all along. Someone who remembered her not as a monster, but as a human being who had deserved love, understanding, and peace. She told Eleanor's story, not as a ghost story or a tale of supernatural horror, but as a human story about trauma, healing, and the power of being believed. She spoke at conferences, wrote articles, and worked with other survivors of institutional abuse to ensure that stories like Eleanor's would never be forgotten. Eleanor nodded, and with a final, grateful smile, she faded away. The hospital fell silent, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the oppressive quiet of suffering, but the peaceful calm of resolution. She would sit on the bench near Eleanor's plaque and remember the ghost who had taught her that healing was possible, that pain could be transformed into peace, and that sometimes the most important thing you could do for someone was simply to believe them. Sarah stood alone in the electroshock therapy room, feeling the profound shift in the building's energy. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. "It's over," she said when he answered. All of them. Jenny just called me. She remembers everything." And Eleanor Sarah looked around the room one last time. She's free. She's not the memory thief anymore. Over the next few weeks, Sarah documented everything. She interviewed the victims, who had all made complete recoveries. But more importantly, she kept her promise. The old Blackwood Psychiatric Hospital was eventually demolished, replaced by a memorial garden dedicated to the patients who had suffered there. Sarah visited the memorial garden often, especially on difficult days when her work brought her face to face with other stories of trauma and abuse. The memory thief was gone, but Eleanor's story lived on, not as a cautionary tale about the supernatural, but as a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of truth, and the possibility of redemption. And in the quiet moments between cases, when Sarah closed her eyes and remembered her own mother's voice, the memory thief was dead. Eleanor Blackwood was finally home.